Hello everybody. So in today's video, I want to cover 10 stocks that I think are good deal or nearing good deals right now. Actually 9, because if you look at PayPal is a little bit expensive per my spreadsheet. But overall, all of these stocks are interesting to me. Before I go through these stocks, let me just say that right now, of course, MicroStrategy and Tesla are crashing. Well, Tesla, it's understandable, right? Because it went up 15% yesterday. So that's okay. We'll see. MicroStrategy, I do not understand the short-sighted nature of the market. I look at MicroStrategy as really a deal right now, and so we'll see. If it gets under 1,000, I might get into a situation where I direct all of my buys towards my highest conviction, one of my highest conviction, which is MicroStrategy. So we'll see. We'll see. But aside from Tesla and MicroStrategy crashing right now, I want to focus on 10 stocks that may be values that look interesting and that I've been adding to periodically. So let me get started. So the first stock, I covered it yesterday, and it is Shift4. So Shift4 is a company that actually was trading much higher. It was, almost 60-70% higher just a few months ago because it was rumored to be acquired by some bigger fintech, but the acquisition didn't go through, which means that this stock stays on the market for now, and my hope is that it's not for sale anymore. Shift4 is I would argue one of the popular payment companies that you find in the US, and they are also in partnership with, say, SpaceX, and they're in partnership with Starlink, and they're in partnership with many other larger venues in the US for payments. So, for example, they do a lot of hospitality payments. They do a lot of stadiums, a lot of sporting events. They really have a high growth strategy for their payments. They are the high grower in the payment space and the transaction space in the US, in Europe as well. They're entering, not say Latin America like a StoneCo or dLocal, but no, I'm very interested in Shift4 because I love the numbers on this company. The company is predicted to grow 34%, so that's from a hefty base already at 2.5 billion, and their gross margin. So with the interchange fees, their gross margin is 29% actually. So if you compare my video yesterday where I had them at more than 60%, I had excluded the interchange fee. So you gotta extract those from the cost of doing business, and so the gross margin is 29%. EBITDA margin is 14%. You are getting here a company that achieves a rule of 40. It's at a 48, so more than a rule of 40, which is considered desirable. And on the cheapness metric, which is enterprise value over revenue growth, over gross profit over revenue growth, which is my metric of how cheap a stock is. This is a top 20% stock, top 20% cheapest. So I'm looking at this stock. I'm adding this stock right now to my portfolio. Now, a stock that I still strongly believe in, but that I'm not adding to my portfolio right now, but I am a firm believer in this company called STNE. So STNE is the Square of Brazil. They do payments for more than 3 million small businesses in Brazil. Noteworthy, StoneCo has been focusing on really growing their cash pile. They also have a buyback that's been announced, and they're getting back into lending and doing some lending for small business, which is why the market is a little fearful, although they are going very slow with their lending because they are focusing on profitability right now. We are not seeing the number of growth for revenue growth that we used to see in the past. So revenue growth for StoneCo is predicted to be only 16%, but the gross margin is excellent at 74%, and the stock is still cheap at a 0.18. Now, you may notice this stock, StoneCo, really took a dent in my spreadsheet, right? It used to be twice as cheap in the past. Why? Because it was growing twice as fast. So the way my spreadsheet looks at stock is on the EV over GP over RG metric here, it it clearly punishes stocks that don't grow fast. And so this is why this is a company whose metric keeps going up. And sure enough, it was in the single-digit revenue growth, it would not look attractive at all. However, on the rule of 40, which is a metric that looks at profitability as well, you can see that StoneCo is really winning because it's at a 68%. And that's because their EBITDA margin is excellent at 52%, the most profitable stock out of the 10 that I cover here today. So talking about SoFi, so SoFi is another one of these stocks that is crashing today. It is crashing because SoFi is being prudent, not lending too much and focusing on the tech platform growth. But we know for SoFi, the number of customers signing up for the app, for the bank is still growing fast. This is a company that's still growing fast. They are just not turning on the revenue growth through their lending division. And of course, the market is very fearful about banks right now, hence why SoFi is a stock that is selling off. But I consider the company cheap right now at 0.26. They are profitable with EBITDA margin at 25%. They achieve the rule of 40 at a 42%. And really, SoFi in the $6 is really a price that is tough to understand. If you've been following this stock for a while, you have a hard time understanding why this stock is still so cheap, despite the fact that it's almost doubled its customer base in a matter of 6 quarters. It's doubled its customer base, and it's just trading lower and lower. And eventually the market will wake up, I think, to a company like SoFi. And SoFi is one of these stocks that's going to be rate dependent. Well, all stocks to an extent are going to go up and rise when they drop rates, but especially a company like SoFi, for example, which is a bank which relies heavily on interest rates. And of course, nobody's borrowing money when interest rates are 12-13% on personal loans. That's not attractive. When those rates drop, those personal loans rates are going to get more attractive, loan rates are going to get more attractive, and a bank is going to make more money. A bank like SoFi will. Moving on to PayPal. So PayPal is one of these companies that is just not faring too well on my spreadsheet because the revenue growth is bad at 8% revenue growth. I mean, this is a mature company. If you know anything about my style of investing, I bet on adoption. I bet on more and more users adopting the app, the product, whatever a company sells. And PayPal is as adopted as it's going to get, it seems. Or at least it is a high up in adoption. Everybody's heard of PayPal. Everybody's used PayPal once. This is not the case of, say, a company like SoFi or a company like Ford, which is why these companies are growing much faster than a PayPal. Now, of course, you may say, oh, well, this is made up by the fact that, of course, the company is cheap at trading at a 2.29 times enterprise value over sales. Well, yeah, that is very cheap, but you can get stocks that grow 30-40% that are also trading at 2 to 3 times sales. If you look at Oddity, if you look at HIMS on my spreadsheet, if you look at Ford, right, they are as cheap on a price sales basis, but they're growing much faster. But anyways, PayPal is one of these companies that is cheap. It's a turnaround story. It's a turnaround stock, but you can see they are the least attractive on my EV over GP over revenue growth metric, and they do not break the rule of 40. This is the only stock out here that does not break the rule of 40 at a 26. So we will see where PayPal is headed. But PayPal is a turnaround story, and they seem to have had good earnings earlier today, but we will see now. Let's talk about consumer type, direct to consumer brand type stocks. So On running shoes. So this is a running shoe company, very popular in the US and in Europe and in China, kind of taking the world by storm, kind of the new quote-unquote Hoka, or like you see people online saying, oh, the only shoe more comfortable than a Hoka. Not really a shoe snob. Don't know too much about shoes, but I know business, and I know this stock is selling a lot of shoes. They're selling a lot of shoes, and they're expensive. These shoes are like $200, so great margin at 60% gross margin. The predicted revenue growth is 33%. They are hoping for a boost in sales with the Olympic Games coming up and their promotion of the shoes. Enterprise value over sales is a 4.6, so that's pretty cheap. And if you take all of these numbers and you do my enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth, again, which is a spin of the PEG ratio, it's my modification of the PEG ratio for hyper-growth companies, you get a cheap stock at a 0.23. That's a cheap company. That's even cheaper than SoFi, if you really look at it this way. And if you take into account that they're already profitable, at least EBITDA margin profitable, which is all I care about in general. I don't care for GAAP metrics. They are profitable on an EBITDA margin basis, so that's a 45%. So if you add EBITDA margin to revenue growth, you get a 45%. So that's a profitable company. I have been adding to On Running Shoes. Not buying the shoes, but definitely buying the stock. The day I'm buying $200 shoes has not come yet. Anyways, moving on to Oddity. So this is yet another one of these stocks where and many of these stocks, by the way, I'm never going to be a customer aside from maybe Celsius and Four that I've used in the US prevalent and Celsius holdings. I actually like the beverage. I like the drink. I think it's interesting. All of these other stocks, you don't necessarily have to be a customer to understand it. Oddity, definitely a stock that I'm not going to be a customer because Oddity is a makeup company. I mean, it's mostly a makeup company. I mean, they also have Spoiled Child, which is their skincare for women, but where Oddity shines is their brand called Il Maquillage, which is more technically not a makeup, it's technically a foundation company. So what does Oddity do? Well, they are an app. They're very popular on TikTok, Instagram, and so you have an app and women scan their face on the app and it's gonna make a custom foundation based on the spectrometry, I'm supposing it's called, based on the analysis of the skin. It's gonna color match, and of course, this type of business when you get a custom product in this case that matches very closely the color of the skin through AI. So if you get a product in this case, that's going to be a very sticky product because once a woman has found the ideal color and it's like a perfect match, they're not going to switch, and you get recurring sales, recurring revenue, and that's how Oddity works. Oddity has a lot of recurring sales from their foundation business where women are like, okay, well, I found my perfect color. I'm just going to be a customer for life, and I'm just going to be receiving it through the mail. And Oddity is, of course, also a play on the disruption of legacy stores moving on to direct to consumers. There's a whole new market that's up for the taking because legacy players in those industries don't want to jeopardize their distributor and their distribution deals. So because of that, Oddity is growing fast at 33%. They have 2 more brands that are coming up. And if you listen to this company, fascinating company, they have a system. They claim to have a system in the beauty space that they can replicate and apply to other fields in beauty, not just foundation. And sure enough, if you look at their brand Spoiled Child, it appears to be taking off. The company is profitable at an EBITDA margin of 20%. The revenue growth, so EBITDA margin plus revenue growth, a rule of 40, that's a 53%. And I like the stock. I like this company. Moving on to HIMS. So on this channel, you know that I'm a big fan of HIMS. HIMS once again being the cheapest in a spreadsheet, which feels usual. This stock is almost always the cheapest in my spreadsheets. So the stock is cheap again, trading at $12 and change. This is a company growing revenue, predicted to grow revenue next 12 months at 41%. The gross margin is outstanding at 82%, which is surprising because they've kept guiding for 75% gross margin, but they keep exceeding their gross margin targets. So what does HIMS? HIMS, briefly, HIMS is what? It's an e-pharmacy plus any doctor without insurance. Insurance is not accepted by HIMS, and because they don't accept insurance, they can move much faster. They can enter many more product categories without having to deal with all of the administrative, all of the reimbursement process, which is a cost and takes a toll on the speed at which a company can move. HIMS sells subscription for pharmaceuticals that deal with minor health ailments like ED, like hair loss. That's all it does. That's what it does. And of course, these products like ED or hair loss, they have the advantage of being mostly recession-proof. If a woman is losing her hair, I doubt she's going to think about cutting that first. I think she's going to cut something else. And same for men with ED. The last thing they're going to cut is typically those small costs related to health, knowing that really HIMS is about $50 a month for one subscription to their pharmaceuticals, about $50 a month. So that is pretty cheap, if you ask me. That's about 2 Netflix subscription, but for something that is much more personal. And because of that, I think this is a company that's gonna do well. Cheap stock at a 0.08. One thing that I want to add about HIMS, of course, is their weight loss offering. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of indication that they're doing well with their weight loss drugs and their weight loss products. And as a result of that, HIMS is one interesting company. Moving on to Mercado Libre. So Mercado Libre is a stock that I've called before a steady, heady, sleep well at night type stock. They're the leader in e-commerce in Latin America. They're growing fast, predicted to grow at 27%. And of course, last quarter they had like a one-time accounting issue that kind of spooked the market. I anticipate that that's going to be gone when they report their earnings tomorrow. And Mercado Libre, I find interesting at this price. It is a premier company in its space. It's also the biggest company on the spreadsheet. You can see at $72 billion. They're in the indexes. They're stable. They get a constant bid for their share, so you have lower volatility, and really their number on EV over GP over revenue growth is 0.31 for the type of quality stock. For a stock of this size, I find very cheap. I mean, case in point, it is twice as cheap as, say, a PayPal for a rate of growth that just entirely blows PayPal's rate of growth out of the water. I mean, it's growing so much faster. EBITDA margin is excellent at 19%, so you get a rule of 42 out of 46 for Mercado Libre. Once again, the leader in e-commerce in Latin America, and by Latin America, I mean principally Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. This is where Mercado Libre is shining. Now, moving on to another business that is taking the world by storm, and that is Celsius Holdings. Well, I should really say the US and not the world. Celsius Holdings, if you live in the United States, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. You go to gas stations, it's all over the place. You go to the store, you have people filling out their Costco carts with, I don't know, $75 or $100 worth of Celsius cans. People are addicted to the stuff here. This is as close as it gets to seeing a product flying off the shelves. It's taking a lot of market share away from Monster, away from Red Bull, and of course if you follow that space, I mean that's a space that's really hard to understand, because on paper, a energy drink business or a drink business that has to be sold in physical store, on paper that shouldn't work, right? On paper, it's Pepsi and Coca-Cola who own the distribution. They own the shelf space, and so the rumor has it, beverage companies don't make any money. But of course, that's mostly a rumor. It's more of a failure of our ways of analyzing business, because if you look at Monster Beverage, Monster Beverage has had one of the most outstanding returns out there. And, of course, Warren Buffett was all about Coca-Cola. And now you have Celsius Holdings, who is once again providing great returns in the soft drink space, in the beverage space. So lots of returns to be provided by a company like Celsius. Of course, that's the second most expensive I have here, but still cheap. If it's under a 0.5, you're still getting cheap. My number, EV over GP over revenue growth, to really understand it, I think when you look at it, if it's under a 0.5, what it's telling you is that it's rather a deal, because the PEG ratio of Peter Lynch is a 1, right? That's a 1 for Peter Lynch, but I'm not using profits, right? I'm using something that's higher up in the income statement. I'm using gross profits. That's higher up in the income statement. And so the ratio that you require should be lower. Under 0.5, in my view, is a sign that you have slight undervaluation. So in my view, there's slight undervaluation for a stock like Celsius Holdings. Again, this is a stock that is using fundamental processes to get people to come back. 200 milligram of caffeines that will get people addicted to a beverage if you have 200 milligram of caffeines. And They also, in the history of Celsius, in the early days, they would associate themselves with accelerating metabolism, weight loss, all of that sort of stuff. You just see it. You just see it. If you live in the US, you see this drink is everywhere, and so we'll see if that continues. That seems to be continuing. There is no signs of slowdown for now. And the last stock that I like very much, and that I was skeptical when I started analyzing this stock on the channel, but now I really like it, and it's TransMedics. So TransMedics is unfortunately an organ transplant company. They are revolutionizing the organ transplant business with their organ care system, which is a system that kind of makes dry ice obsolete. So back in the day, when you had, unfortunately, an accident and someone passes away, the organs could be transplanted, but they would have to go on dry ice. TransMedics created a machine that sustains the life of the organ, and it's an organ care system. You put it in the machine, and the machine has a much longer life, allowing for transfer in a plane to a recipient who is waiting for an organ donation. And TransMedics is a hybrid between that organ care system as well as an airline. They just acquired a flight school. They're turning it into an airline. And they are now a full service provider of organ care transplantation. And it's a profitable business, and they hope to get to 10,000 transplants by, I believe it is something like 2028. So not that far away. So that growth should continue for the foreseeable future based on what they've guided. And so if you add all of that up, you get a cheap stock at a 0.29, and you get a high growth stock. You get a very profitable stock, and the profitability, in my view, should keep skyrocketing and going up, because they are the only ones with that system, and they have very, very light competition. And so if you are comfortable investing in this space, that's an interesting company. And the rule of 40 is actually the highest out of all of the stocks that I'm presenting today. The rule of 40 of 74. It's the second highest. I guess I missed it. It's the highest along with Celsius. It's 74. It's really, really high. I don't know why this didn't add it up in my spreadsheet. That should add it up. That should be a 78. Well, so it is the highest at 78. Growing very fast, this company. And I own TransMedics. I think it's an interesting play, and it's a small position for me, but I still own it. So hopefully we'll see. Hopefully I get to focus on these companies. I'm gonna get back to looking at the market this afternoon and kind of see where MicroStrategy is trading at. If it were to get into the 1050, it would get juicy. But if not, I like a lot of these stocks. So these are the cheap stocks that I like today. This was not investment advice, no financial advice. This is just entertainment, hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.